And welcome to another level 3 5-minute video. In this session we're going to be talking about the different printing methods, most common printing methods. So the three most common ones, the earliest printing method that we have was the letterpress, and the other two we'll talk about are offset lithography. Some people refer to it just as litho, other people just refer to it as offset. And then we've got gravure. So letterpress, the ink sits above the surface of the printing form. With the offset, the ink sits on the surface, in the plane of the printing form. And with gravure, the ink sits below the surface, so it actually sits in recesses. So here's an example of letterpress. It's the oldest printing process. You can print up to about 35 impressions per hour, and it's quite good for short runs. So this is the printing form, this is what you want to print. You put ink on the surface of there, it presses into the surface of your sheet, and you've got a printed product. Offset litho is a bit more complicated. Imagine getting a piece of chalk. If you dip some chalk into some water, it would get wet everywhere. Imagine getting the chalk and getting a wax crayon and maybe drawing a little circle on the wax crayon with chalk, on the chalk with the wax crayon. If you dunk that in water, water will soak into all the chalk, but where you put the wax, there will be no water. If you then take that and you dunk it into some oil-based ink, where the water has been on the chalk, the oil-based ink will be repelled. Where the wax is, the ink will stay. You can then take that and press it onto a piece of paper, and the image that you crayoned will then be on your piece of paper. So that's how the offset process works. It takes a picture, it projects the light onto a special polymer film. Where the light hits the polymer film, it becomes water repellent. Where the light doesn't go, it becomes water loving. So we take that film and we then wrap it around this cylinder here. First of all, we put water onto that cylinder. So where there was no light shining, the water will go. Where the light shone, it will become water repellent. Here we have ink being added to it now. Where we've put water, the ink will not stick. The water repellent areas, the ink will stick. That will then come around here. This inked image will then be, the term is set off onto the surface of this roll, which we call the printing blanket. And then as the ink comes around here and comes into contact with the paper, the image will be transferred to the paper. So this is the offset process. It relies on the fact that water and ink don't mix. And each colour, when you get an image, it breaks it up into different colours, and each colour is applied at a separate station. So on this station here, we might apply yellow ink, and then further along we'll have blue ink, and further along we'll have a different colour of ink. So every ink is put on at a separate station and the image is built up. The ink is offset from the cylinder onto the printing blanket, and this type of process is good for either long or short runs. Whereas the previous one is only good for short runs, this is good for long and short runs. And then finally we've got gravure. And we said with gravure the ink is below the surface. So there's the printing form, we actually etch out tiny little holes, little crevices, we fill them with ink, and then we transfer that onto the sheet. Because you can choose how deep you want these recesses, you can get more ink on here than with any other process. And so this has the widest range of print density. That's why it's really good, the widest range of print density. And this is particularly good for long runs. You don't want the hassle of having to laser etch all these for short runs, so it's better for long runs. And Again, every colour is put down separately in groups of dots, and the eye mixes the dots. So for example, if you wanted a green image, you would have one station where you apply lots of blue dots, and then you would have another station where you would overlay or go in between of those with yellow dots, and your eye would mix them and you wouldn't see yellow dots and blue dots, you would just see solid green. So a quick summary of the printing methods. We've got letterpress, where the ink sits proud of the surface, and that's good for short runs. We've got offset, where the ink sits on a hydrophobic area in the plane of the printing form, and that's good for long or short runs. And then we've got gravure, where you can have the greatest ink density. The ink sits in recesses, and that's really good for long runs. Okay, well, thank you for listening to this video, and please feel free to follow us on any of this social media.